Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, worshippers of all ages, welcome to YouTube. My name is SeaRaptor, and today we're bringing you a first look at upcoming Tier VII Premium French cruiser, Toulon. Now, the recently announced kind of French cruiser split comes with a bit of a pre-ship, if you will, and that is Toulon. The branch split will begin at Tier VIII, but Toulon here comes into the game as a Tier VII Premium. She is, however, obviously very much related, very kin to those French supercruisers, mega cruisers, whatever you want to call them, that are going to be coming to the tech tree. And so we're going to start here today, look at this ship, kind of start to wrap our brains around how she fits in a bit, and then later on in the week, we'll start the Tier 8 first looks with Cherbourg, which is the actual tech tree branch, and we'll have a look at those and compare those to their contemporaries as we go on up the line. Down here at Tier 7, though, Toulon is a very, very interesting ship. Tier 7, for cruisers in particular, and there's a lot of really good Tier 7 cruisers, is a place where you basically have traditional light cruisers, by which I mean 6-inch guns, or traditional heavy cruisers, by which I mean 8-inch guns. That's pretty much it. Like, I'm looking down the list here. I mean, the York in the tech tree, the German tech tree, is 210 millimeter guns, but that's still basically 8 inches. So, like, nobody really treats it any different, right? There are, of course, some 5-inch armed cruisers down here. I'm looking at you, Atlantas, right? But in general, it's either 6-inch or 8-inch, and that's it. But Toulon here is very, very different. There has been this concept in World of Warships for a long time of the supercruiser, right? You look at Alaska, for example, U.S. Premium up at Tier 9. You look at Stalingrad or Eiger over a premium German ship. All of these ships have basically 12-inch guns, okay? And Toulon here also does as well. So for the first time, we're seeing them translate the supercruiser concept down to Tier 7. And what's really interesting, I say interesting, but what's a little horrifying, if you're a mid-tier cruiser player, this ship will occasionally get Tier 5 matchmaking. So imagine you're a new player in World of Warships and you're playing your Omaha for the first time, and you run into one of these things. Omaha is already not the kindest ship to learn. She's fairly fragile. She likes to eat citadels. And then you've got this thing coming for you. Yikes. Yikes. As if the cruiser learning curve wasn't brutal enough already. Let's get in and look around the stats, but I kind of wanted to point that out a little bit, that the super cruiser concept continues to kind of slowly work its way backwards farther and farther into the game, and I'm a little concerned about it. Starting like you do with survivability, we always do, 42,500 hit points. Now, this is a premium ship, but for a Tier 7 cruiser, this is absolutely best in tier, right? The highest tech tree cruiser health is Miyoko. That's Tier 7 Japanese heavy. If you strip out and if you say, okay, what's the highest tier premium prior to this, a highest health premium, it would probably go Gorizia. I'm looking over the list. Yeah, it's Gorizia, which is 36,000 and change. So even up until this point, even all the premiums and everything's, right? And there's 11 tech tree Tier 7 cruisers, and Toulon here will be the 13th premium Tier 7 Tier 7 cruiser. Toulon here will now steal the crown away finally after nearly 7 years of Miyoko being the beefiest Tier 7 heavy cruiser. Toulon will steal that away by about 3,000 hit points here. 25% torpedo protection is pretty darn solid. In fact, it is also best in tier. Again, because most of the cruisers that you're up against at this tier are either traditional heavies or traditional lights. So some of the heavies, you can get torpedo protection in the 15 to 20% range, 13, 16, whatever, something like that. But nobody has over 20 except this ship. So as Tier 7 cruisers go, survivability-wise, there's a lot to like. Armor layout. 16 millimeter bow, 60 millimeter extremities here means that you are not going to be bow tanking any battleships in your matchmaking bracket. And that's okay. You shouldn't be. Like, there are some heavy cruisers that can do it in this tier, again, depending on the battleship that you're up against. Like York, for example, and New Orleans are both given reinforced bows of, I believe, 25 millimeters so that they're allowed to, maybe 24, something along those lines. But they're allowed to kind of push in against opposing battleships of the 14-inch caliber range 12-inch caliber range and do some nasty things, but Toulon here did not afford it that. However, her belt armor here, 170 millimeters. That's really nice. Of course, that is easily best in tier of all the Tier 7 cruisers, as you would kind of expect of a supercruiser type of ship. Now, it's not a huge gap, right? If you the best armored tech tree ship is hilariously, it is Tier 7 British heavy cruiser HMS Surrey. Surrey's armor belt is often overlooked, I find, at Tier 7. And Toulon here, a little bit thicker. So, just like all the supercruisers you're used to seeing up to this point, this is a ship that's not meant to push in close. She does not have torpedoes, spoiler alert. So yeah, you want to hold this thing at range. Battleships will absolutely citadel you as you show broadside. I will be curious. I'm betting a fair number of light cruisers will struggle to pen this belt, or at least land citadels through this belt. Opposing heavy cruisers, pretty sure they'll be able to get through it, especially at mid-range. 25 millimeters of deck armor, 25 millimeters of casemate armor. You're going to be taking lots and lots and lots and lots of HE shells on the deck that will all end up being full pens. What do I mean by that? Well, every light, all the traditional light cruisers, by which I mean 6-inch armed ships. I'll just pick one randomly off the list. Let's say Eendracht, right? Tier 7 Dutch cruiser Eendracht, right? 152 millimeter guns. You get full pens at starting at 26 millimeters. So even just landing shells on this deck, I will get full penetration out of the HE shells. Certainly on the bow and the forward, and then all the way through the midsection, and then all the way up here in the upper works. So if anybody is shooting you that's basically not a destroyer armed ship, by which I mean 5-inch guns or below, you're getting full pinned on this armor scheme. So you're going to take a lot of damage when you're in battles with other cruisers. The upside you have, of course, is that your guns will hit a lot harder than theirs. They just reload very slowly. Maneuverability. Oh, hit the wrong button. Maneuverability and concealment. Let's pull these up here. Speed 30 knots, 710 on the turning circle, 11.5 on the rudder shift. This is not the fastest Tier 7 cruiser by a long shot. She is actually tied for the slowest, tied with Boise and 9 de Julio and Surrey, essentially, right? 30 knots is the bottom end of Tier 7 cruisers. But again, I look at that and go, that's okay. This is not a ship designed to push up and be hyper aggressive. Certainly not early. Not early in a match by me. So yeah, 710 turning circle is worse than tier. Actually, no, I lied. The Russians exist. And actually so do the Japanese. But it's not great, right? You're a big ship, okay? You're going to handle like a big ship. And you're just going to have to get over it. And then 11.5 on the rudder shift is hilariously not worse than tier. Not even close, really. Like there's some ships in this tier that are 13 and change, and you're well north of that. So she's going to handle. The more I look at this ship, the more I kind of feel like she sort of wants to play like a Graf Spee, right? Which is a Tier 6 premium for the Germans. Graf Spee's guns are a little smaller. And certainly notably less accurate, I'll say. But yeah, I feel like you're going to kind of behave that way, and your handling and everything is sort of comparable. So if you've driven a Graf Spee, and Spee's been around a while, then you should have kind of an idea of what you're getting into here. Concealment, 11.2 on the surface. Full stealth rig for Toulon. And actually, you know what? Now that I look at this, I'm betting that's with... She's got a camo on, doesn't she? Doesn't she? I didn't think about this before I did. Yep. She's got a beautiful flat gray camo. So let's fix this. Turn that off so I can actually see what it is. All right, 11.5 then. So let me make a quick change. There we go. All right, so 11.5 base, naked ship. That camo was deceptive, which means that a full stealth rig Toulon is down to 10 even on the surface. Now, this is where things start to kind of become real head-scratching for me, because that's really good. That's really good. It's not best in tier, right? But there's a lot of like traditional heavy cruisers. I'm looking at you, Miyoko and York and Algerie, that all have significantly higher surface detections than this thing. And I go, well, what is that about then, right? Why? You know how Alaska up at Tier 9 has like pretty solid stealth and can occasionally like really ambush opposing cruisers? Toulon's kind of got that vibe going for her right now. And I'm a little concerned. I'm not going to lie. I'm a little concerned. I mean, there are some light cruisers that don't have detection that's good, right? Helena Helena's detection isn't this good in the tech tree. And she's a light cruiser. Now she has 15 guns, so that's crazy. Like, a Helena would absolutely melt this ship like butter. But this thing outspots the Helena. Okay, that's curious. That's interesting. So that stealth is going to be something you're really going to have to lean into in certain situations, I think, to get maximum use out of this ship. Now, of course, with a ship like Toulon, it's all about the main battery, so let's have a peek. Toulon's main battery is comprised of 2 quadruple turrets of 305mm guns. She is an all-forward gun configuration like we've seen on, let's say, Richelieu over in the battleship tree. And this is the first time we've seen that, that kind of concept really carried forward here to a cruiser. Now, I'm trying to think of some of the other supercruisers. There might be a couple that do this, but in general, this is not normal. Usually there's always at least one turret back aft, but don't be fooled. These turrets you see here on Toulon's aft are actually secondary turrets. So this is her main battery right here. 305mm guns. Now, this is not obviously a normal caliber for Tier 7, as we were talking about earlier in the video. These are the exact same guns that you will find aboard a Tier 4 French battleship Corbeil. But here is the difference. The ballistics are not the same. The shell velocities are, right? If you were to run these, put these numbers side by side, you would see that the shell velocity for the HE and the AP shells out of both guns is the same. But Wargaming has made some changes to these shells behind the scenes. So don't be thinking you can bust out your Corbeil and go figure out how these guns are going to perform. It's not going to work like that. We're going to have to get down to the weeds a little bit, and I'm not going to belabor this point, but the bottom line is that because you're up at Tier 7, and you will see Tier 9 opponents in this ship, Tier 4 shell ballistics and characteristics are not going to cut it. Wargaming knows this, and they've made some changes behind the scenes. So let's talk briefly about the overall characteristics of the guns in terms of how they compare to her contemporaries. For starters, 28-second reload, worse in tier. Not surprising, right? A supercruiser like this is going to have bad reload, and this is very near battleship reload. In fact, there are Tier 7 battleships in the game that reload faster than this. I'm looking at you, Gneisenau and Scharnhorst. So this is a huge handicap that you're going to have to play around when you play this ship. That 28-second reload is a huge problem. Second, 40-second turret traverse. Again, absolutely worst in tier. This is not a ship that you want to take in close and be brawling. Your turret traverse is not going to keep up with it, okay? You can buff this. You can probably get this down to almost 30 seconds, but these are still going to feel like battleship guns in the turret traverse. So Toulon, in my mind, is going to be a very interesting ship to position, right? She doesn't have a bow armor to bow tank or the armor scheme to bow tank. We saw that earlier. Look at her armor scheme. Is this a ship that might be best firing over her shoulder, perhaps? I mean, kind of stern to butt to the enemy, looking back over her shoulder, trying that kind of thing. Well, let's have a quick peek of the turret angles. And the answer is maybe, right? You can get these turrets 34 degrees over your shoulder, 34 degrees off the stern. That's not bad. That's not bad. But again, her rudder shift and her speed is only going to allow her to kite for so long. Remember, she's not that fast. So there are Tier 7 battleships. Again, I'm looking at you, say Gneisenau, that are faster than this ship. So, this is going to be a challenging ship to position, I think, to get maximum use out of these guns. Further compounding things, right? 16.8 kilometers of range. That is... that's not bad, right? But it is pretty good. It's certainly on the high end for cruisers. But right, you're still most battleships still outrange you. And again, you're going to need a lot of spot. Like if you're going to ambush cruisers, you're very stealthy, you have decent range, but somebody's got to be out spotting for you. As soon as your destroyers start to die, or there's no planes around, no friendly carrier planes or something to spot for you, the stealth, your ability, that alpha strike or whatever, it's not going to be as useful. This is going to be a very challenging ship to put in the right position. 189-meter dispersion ellipse is also not anything to get super excited about. When you compare this to, let's say, Miyoko. Now, remember, Miyoko has got really good accuracy, Japanese heavy cruiser, but I'm trying to find something that is marginally comparable. Let's actually look at who's got range like this. Probably Zara? No. Who am I looking at? Indianapolis? Indianapolis's range is almost identical, almost exactly. Indianapolis is a 16.9 kilometer range, okay, on a traditional American heavy cruiser 8-inch guns, right? She's 149 meter dispersion ellipse. So your dispersion ellipse is like 15% worse than traditional, quote unquote, traditional heavy cruisers. So you're not getting some amazing dispersion. Your sigma is good, right? It's still cruiser sigma, it's still 2.0 or whatever, but your ellipse is much larger. So your patterns are going to be less consistent inside that ellipse, because the ellipse is larger, and then you're only getting like 2 shots a minute, every 28 seconds. Like, ouch. You're gonna have to be These are gonna have to be really good guns, okay? And that explains, in my mind, why they've changed the ballistics of some of these shells, like how they function. All right, so with all of that said, we now the main battery is both a blessing and a curse. You're gonna have to fight it a little bit and work with it. Let's talk about what's actually changed. For starters, the drag on these shells has been reduced. Okay, for both types of shells, the drag is not the same. And I'll put some graphics in here and kind of highlight these differences. The drag is not the same. The detonation threshold on the AP is not the same. Ricochet angles, projectile speed, all of that is the same, but that air drag being different means that the shell travel times, particularly on the AP, and I'm gonna harp on the AP for a bit, because with this kind of stealth on this kind of AP, these shells, you're gonna be encouraged to look for opposing cruisers to shoot, right? And lacking that, you're going to fall back on the HE, and the HE is going to do what HE does, right? But the AP is in my mind, a very critical ammo type for this ship. So the shells are going to get downrange faster, less drag. The detonators are actually improved. I'm sorry, they're not worse; they're better. So that means that you should be able to get more reliable citadels, I believe, on cruisers, right? They're less chance of overpens is where I'm going there. That fuse timer is quicker. And then the shell itself is a slightly different mass. So there's a lot to like about the AP. The HE kind of goes in the other direction. Toulon's HE, Toulon's HE is worse fire chance by about 5%. The explosion size is a little smaller. But again, I mean, it's not rad. For what you're trying to get out of HE, you're really just trying to get fires. The fire chance is the biggest nerf there, right? Well, the HE shells on Corbeil are 22%, and then here, of course, on Toulon, 17%. So you're losing about a quarter of your fire chance as you go from the battleship shell here to the cruiser shell. But again, I feel like Toulon really wants to be maximizing that AP wherever she can get a hold of it. So yeah, the main battery. If you do a direct comparison, these are the exact same guns that are on the Tier 4 French battleship, but in reality, they're gonna feel very, very different, and that's good. You want them to, because low tier battleship guns are traditionally not something to get excited about. She does have some secondary turrets back here aft. She's got a bunch of these little 100mm dual turrets hanging around. And then, of course, the big ones all the way astern. She's got 2 of these 155mm guns. So she's got a pair of 6-inch turrets back here. Basically light cruiser guns. These are, as near as I can figure, similar, if not identical, to the same kind of guns you would find, let's say, 1 tier lower down on De Grasse or La Galicianaire, for example. So she's got some light cruiser guns back here, but because those are secondary guns, you're not going to be able to do much with them. They're just going to do whatever they do. So, is the main battery on Toulon worth all these disadvantages? I don't know yet. I don't know. The proof's in the pudding, and I'm not going to play the ship. My philosophy is I won't play a ship that I can't openly talk about, and the way the rules of the program are written right now, if I were to play it, I couldn't talk about it. So I tend to avoid playing test ships just on principle. We're going to have to see. We'll have to see as we get deeper into testing. Here's hoping. She does come with a couple of T-Rex depth charge strikes. Well, I say a couple, really just the one flight. If you're close enough to use this, you're probably already dead, the way submarines currently work in World of Warships. So good luck. A defense. This is something else that I won't say it's awesome, because there's not really any awesome. Well, I'll say there's not any. There's very few awesome Tier 7 cruiser anti-aircraft suites. There's some that are quite solid. Interact, again, really, really good inside the mid-range, but really crappy at long range. Surrey's is actually pretty solid. The Americans have a couple that are noteworthy. Toulon, unfortunately, falls into none of these categories. Her AA is okay, and that's really about all you can say for it. For starters, only 2 flak puffs. Like, this feels bad, right? If she's in a group of ships, this flak might be meaningful. If she's on her own, this flak is not going to be really all that discouraging. Continuous damage-wise, not really much better. Only 56 in the outer bubble, 35 in the middle ring. All of her punch, just about every single last ounce of it, coming in that 2.5 kilometer inner bubble. Now, the inner bubble is 2.5 kilometers, so you've got that going for you, I guess. You're going to get 1 to 2 more ticks of it on the dive bombers that are trying to push AP bombs through your deck. And spoiler alert, they're going to be able to push AP bombs through your deck very easily, so yikes, don't let that happen. But you're not going to dissuade anybody coming at you with rockets. For example, this ship, probably a really, really good target for all those German AP rocket planes, or anybody coming at you with torpedoes. So if they're coming at you with dive bombers, this AA might be impactful. If they're coming at you with almost anything else, chances are they're not going to lose but maybe one plane. It's going to feel bad. So just know that going in, that her AA suite is not anything to get excited about. Consumables. Let's have a peek at what's on the consumables list. All right, what do we got over here? We're shipping World of Warships. We get a damage control party. Makes sense. We have a choice between defensive fire and hydroacoustic search. Now, it's only 4 kilometer hydro. Given the state of her AA, I don't think I would invest in defensive fire. I love to slaughter planes, but usually you have to have a decent starting point, and Toulon to me does not feel like that starting point is decent. I'll try it out probably once or twice, maybe, along the way, but it just on paper, it doesn't look like there's a lot there to get excited about. So hydro is probably your best bet. But the thing you got to remember, guys, this is going to be defensive hydro, okay? The only time you should be using hydro in this ship to push a destroyer is if it's the late game, and that destroyer is probably a one salvo kill. Because by the time, if you're inside of 4 kilometers, okay, remember your turret traverse is terrible, and your reload is terrible for hunting destroyers. Absolutely garbage. You're going to get 1 salvo to kill that guy. That's it. If you miss or he doesn't die in that salvo and his torpedoes are on reload, are available to shoot, you're dead. So this is not a ship that you would be using the hydroacoustic search aggressively. This would be a defensive measure, and once in a blue moon, you'd be able to use it offensively. She is a French ship. She gets the fancy French engine boost. That's really sexy, right? You see there for 3 minutes, she gets a 20% speed boost. That pushes her all the way up to, run the numbers, 36 knots. That's pretty good. That takes her from a fairly mediocre kind of low-end bottom of the tier speed to the other end of the spectrum, right? We're talking like Miyoko speed now, 36 knots. So that's nice. This is going to be a great repositional tool for her to have. She does have those midships aircraft facilities. So she's got fighters rather than spotter planes, which, again, makes sense. You'd prefer the spotter, but the fighter is what it is, and every now and then you'll get a plane out of it. Yay. But notably, she does get a repair party. This is a big deal, right? This is a ship that's going to soak up a lot of damage when she's spotted, especially from opposing light cruisers and probably from battleships that bother to shoot at her. So this is noteworthy. She's going to need this to stay in the fight as long as she can and maximize the use of these guns. Every salvo she gets, remember, we're talking battleship reloads, guys. You're talking maybe over the course of a 20-minute game, you're only going to get, what is that, 40 salvos? Let's add a few extra because they're 28-second reloads. So call it 45 to 50 salvos. That's max. That's if you play a full game. That's the maximum number of salvos you're going to get out. So you got to get good use out of them, and this repair party is going to help. So yeah, there is Tier 7 French Premium Toulon. Starts to give us a little bit of a flavor of where Wargaming might be going with this. And this branch, this line of ships. We'll have a look at the tech tree ships next with Cherbourg. I hope you'll join me then. In the meantime, wash your hands, be safe. I'll catch you next time.